Yeah, I'm gonna go build my own theme park with blackjack and hookers.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is March for March 15th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns, sitting right over there. My own personal blackjack and hookers. Ashley Burns. That's actually, yeah, the metaphor holds up, man. The metaphor holds up. It is Friday, everyone. It is the end of the week. The week has come to an end. The week had all the other days of the week come and stab it in the back, and then it died. Is that what the Ides of March is?
I just looked this up because I always assumed the Ides of March, you know, the lovely saying, beware the Ides of March, is, you know, one of those popular culture things. But what the fuck does that mean? I always assumed that meant, you know, middle of March. That's, you know, bad time. It turns out the Ides of March is the 74th day in the Roman calendar, and it corresponds to the 15th of March, and it was marked by several religious observances and was the deadline for settling debts in Rome. So basically, like...
Don't even start with me today with settling debts.
This is pay up day. But so that's welcome to the Ides, everybody. Be fucking ware. It's also follow-up Friday.
What's an Ide, though? Like, an Ide is a day, a religious day?
Yeah, I'm sure it's one of those Latin things that if you actually translate it will sound really dumb, so we just don't.
Was March a Roman month? Ides of March? Or was it like the Ides of Triem? You know, I've often wondered, too, that December, by its name, should be the 10th month, because Des, right? And October should be the 8th month.
I think some months got like weirdly moved around and added because there was August, right, which was added for Augustus.
Is he? We're like just
bullshitting the
Roman
history now, maybe.
podcast
but
now,
in which we are going to get absolutely everything wrong, and because it's Friday, we're just not going to follow up on it next Friday because that's a whole new week.
Yeah, but it's weird. I've lived a long time in my life before I made the connection that Sept should be the 7th month.
And Oct should be the 8th?
Yeah, and Oct should be the 8th month, but it's the 10th month. And you've accounted for 1 month being added in, but where's this other month?
July?
Maybe
Julius?
It's another month that like roams around the solar system and is going to collide with Earth when the Mayan calendar resets.
On an Ide of March. It's due on an Ide.
On the Ide of Montezuma.
It's the it's actually
now we're a podcast.
It's the Ide meteor.
It's the 10th month, the hidden 10th month that's hiding behind Jupiter that's going to collide with you and ruin your fucking year. All right, well, it is follow-up Friday. Our tradition here on Fridays is we go over the topics that we discussed in the week. That's like the first half of the podcast on Friday. We either expand on things we want to expand on or we correct things that we got slightly wrong. If we get something really wrong, we usually correct it the next day or even sometimes in the link dump. I don't think we've had anything too egregious. The big thing for me that I almost went back and corrected this week was that the billionaire who died in her Tesla, I said at the time, people were reporting that she had been on a Department of Transportation Safety Board. That was actually her sister who was on that, who is married to Mitch McConnell.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes. There was also, I think, some follow-up about the Tesla itself and toughened glass, right?
Right. It was specifically, this came from our subreddit, where it's been great. Like, people have been, like, pitching in when they know things. I'm getting to the point of reading these, though, where I'm getting a little bit more buyer beware. So I'll pass that along to you all as we read some of this because, you know, as we talk about things on air, there's people who get excited about that, and sometimes people will present themselves as something they are not. It happens often on the internet. Like I'm not reading one in particular where someone said that they worked in law enforcement, and I just don't. It's not that I don't believe them. I just have no way to verify that.
Sure. And
we need a way to verify that. I mean, I could reach out to them and ask for a picture of their badge.
That sounds like work. That sounds like work. No, I'm not going to do it.
Listen, I'm in the idle march. That's where I am.
The whole thing was a typo.
Yeah, but the article or the post that was made by Hoorah Productions, which I'm guessing they make exclusively Marines-based content. I asked them a question. or somebody actually, Sir Tinklebottom. Don't judge us by the usernames on Reddit here. He made a comment. I'm sure, I guess it's a he, fair to assume, made a comment about that the hammers that we talked about, that we keep in our cars, emergency hammers that break the glass, they don't tend to work on modern glass, like all the reinforced glass on cars, but there are some windows that are tempered glass. You know, the kind of glass when you shatter, it just turns into a billion pieces that don't cut you. But not every window is going to be those, and they'll be marked with it. And Mr. Hoorah Productions said, that is correct. Laminated glass is extremely difficult to break, which is why automakers started using it to protect occupants in rollovers.
Makes sense.
Vast majority of glass breaking tools will not work on laminated windows. Typically, automakers will include one tempered glass window, which most glass breaking tools will be able to get through. Look around your car for a sticker in each window to see which is laminated versus tempered. It's important to note, though, that the stickers and one tempered window are not requirements, at least not in the U.S.
All right.
And then provided a comprehensive study done by do you say the AAA or the AAA?
I call it AAA.
AAA did back in 2018. So we'll put that one in the link dump. I thought it was interesting because we were telling people, get one of these in your cars.
I would much rather learn that now.
My God.
Than when I accidentally reverse into a pond.
Yeah, it's horrifying. And
Yes.
to be in a situation, and nobody knows what the actual situation is, but to be in a situation where you're in mortal danger and just like people can't help
and
you.
they're so close.
They're
They could
right
be
there.
millimeters away.
They're right there.
And they can't get, it's just like a special kind of extra terrifying that help is so close and just cannot get to you.
So we went through something similar to that because when we moved here, there have been people living here for, like modern civilization, like building roads and pathways and wells for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in this area, in Scotland, where we live. And so when I got a survey of our place, there was an old marked well. And I spent all this time looking for the well. And I was like, because I wanted to make sure it was completely covered up or completely filled in because we got little kids. And one of the worst stories that I heard growing up was a little girl who fell in the well. Sarah Jessica. And then she became Sex and the City's leading actress. No, I forget what her name was. But anyway, that was like one of those things before the internet where it was a news story that captivated the whole nation and somehow kept our attention for it seemed like a month. Jessica McClure? Is that her name? Look up Jessica McClure. But she fell in a well and they finally got her out and it was incredible. So I hunted for this well. And
wow, dude.
What?
That's fucking amazing. Jessica McClure, widely known as Baby Jessica, fell into a well in her aunt's backyard in Midland, Texas, October 14th, 1987, at the age of 18 months. Over the next 56 hours, rescuers worked to free her from the 8-inch well casing about 22 feet below grade. Holy shit.
But what's crazy about that is you tell me that was only 56 hours. What year was it?
That was 1987.
That did not seem like 56 hours. Like, that did not seem like less than 3 days on the calendar. It seemed like that was news coverage around the clock for a month. But I was a kid, so, things seemed different. Anyway, very long story short, too late. I found out that what they refer to in our particular region of Scotland, within our particular region of the UK, what they refer to as wells is entirely different. It's basically just springs. It's like it's water that there is so much water here. It's insane. It just bubbles like straight up out of the ground. There's so much water here. I went to the local hardware store, which is basically just kind of looks like Home Depot, but it's not. And I was asking for sprinklers, like those ones that go like
rainbirds.
If I say that to someone in the US, like it's one of the big metal sprinklers that goes
you know exactly what that is.
Yeah. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. There's so much water here and it's so easy to grow things. They have sod pieces of grass on the shelf in the warehouse, in the hardware store.
And there's there for ages.
Like just grass on a shelf. Like you go pick up the grass and then come home and put it in your lawn and it grows. Like Texas, that would be dead in about 3 hours. You got to treat plants in Texas like a dolphin that has beached itself. There's got to be somebody like just splashing water on it constantly.
Keeping a hose on it.
All right. The other thing for Follow Up Friday, since Ashley, do you mind if I take my other one?
Please go ahead.
This is also from our subreddit. There was someone who came in and was talking to us about the Chinese version of TikTok, for lack of a better term. And this is someone who has told us that they spend time in China on a regular basis. This is user Svensk for America. Said, hello, I'm often in China and have family members there. So I can tell you that the TikTok app is banned in China and in Hong Kong. Oh, like they separated that. They have their own version called Douyin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is basically the same app except for a few features. The only reason why TikTok is banned is because it has access to the Western internet. Think Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc. You can't even use a VPN on TikTok in China to access content, as it detects your SIM card to know if it should be banned or not.
Wow.
And I asked some follow-up questions like, what's on it? And they said, they responded that the culture makes the platform have less of the risque stuff, and the censorship safeguards definitely play a part in the content as well. However, if you start watching more and more stuff that's considered to be quote-unquote brain dead, that must be their term for it, you get dumb stuff pretty quickly. I remember a huge meme one time where there was a guy in broken English singing "Row, row, row your boat" in the thickest possible Chinese accent, and he just posted that daily, weekly with millions of likes. People were mostly memeing it. So, they go down that road as well. But I guess the censorship keeps them like from the Western risque stuff.
And you never know if you're going to go on a list.
You never know. Yeah, you never. Have we talked about this on the podcast? One of the things we were fascinated by this last summer was the story that came out about people who were jaywalking in China, and it would take a photo of them and put it up like on a digital billboard at the crosswalk to shame them. That might have been in the Shame Nun podcast that we did. Yeah.
So, this was from June, and this was Chinese video surveillance system is publicly shaming people who jaywalk. In a recent live stream video, Twitch star Jake and Bake.
It's tied into their social credit thing, like the same mentality of it.
Yes, it's very much that they use the like the overall system to basically curb people's bad behavior or attempt to do so. Including such minor infractions as jaywalking. I mean,
it's easy to say too. You look at a different culture and go like, "Wow, that's really crazy." We do that stuff all the time. It's all crowdsourced. Shame is the vernacular now. Yeah,
it's just we do decentralized shame. That's really what it is. I have just a couple of follow-ups. Yesterday we were talking about bushes versus hedges, and I really appreciated someone on our subreddit just.
Someone who didn't listen to yesterday's podcast, like, what? I gotta go listen to that.
Man, I gotta get into this.
Excuse me. And may I issue a correction? I don't think it was bushes versus hedges. I believe it was shrubs.
Shrubs. This was from Eponymous Ben, who said, a hedge is a bush with a job. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. I got a couple of other quick corrections.
Hedge is working for the weekend.
One, I want to, once again, we're really like leaning heavy on help from the subreddit this week. But I complained about our 4-year-old destroying my Spotify algorithm earlier this week, and I want to thank everyone who chimed in, because it was quite a few people who knew this trick who I didn't. That on Spotify you can tap on a playlist or right click, whatever, and you can tell it to disregard the playlist from your algorithm. So basically, if you've got a kid who's interfering with your shit, you put all of their music into their favorite playlist. Yay, them! They have a favorite playlist. And then you disregard it. And my paranormal mage Friday morning thanks you.
I was out at the pub with him last night. We had boys' night at the pub, and which is our Thursday night tradition. And he likes to listen to music. He plays DJ from the back seat. And then it accidentally got into one of my playlists and played one of my songs. And he goes, Daddy, turn that off. Turn that off. I'm like, okay. I admit I don't have the best taste in music, but I'll turn it off. And then I went to turn it off, and he goes, wait a minute. Add that to my playlist. Now I'll listen to it later. And I was like, okay, sir. For review, I sent him the song. I think it was a White Stripes song.
Just so you know, you're being judged.
Something for next follow-up Friday.
Being judged. I also wanted to follow up. We talked a little bit earlier this week about the House voting to move ahead on the ban or forced sale of TikTok. And we talked about Montana specifically has already voted to ban TikTok. It turns out in November, just before this ban was going to take place, it was going to start 1st of January. In November, a federal judge blocked the law for banning TikTok. And I'm going to put this in the link dump, which you can always find on our website. because some of the arguments that the judge puts forward, I suspect are going to be part of the discussion about this larger ban. Specifically, they said it likely violates the First Amendment, and that does seem to be what the critics of this bill are really focusing on, that it could potentially violate the First Amendment.
Well, we were talking about too, just a second ago about like moving. When the government shames you on a big billboard, that feels different than when people do it, on Twitter or whatever. But they're both equally as horrifying when they happen to you, I assume.
One's just a lot more personal. Does that make it?
Which one's more personal?
When people choose to shame you as opposed to the government, the faceless entity doing it as part of a system.
Boy, I feel like if they did that in America, people would jaywalk intentionally, get their face on the billboard. Like throwing signs or whatever.
Streaking.
But yeah, it's like that. So the same thing applies to the First Amendment. This has come up. I've been working on the internet for 20 years, and it's the first thing that Americans always go to is the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Obviously, X is going nuts with those arguments now. But the real issue to me is that we're moving what is public discourse into private ownership. Like they're taking place on private servers. So all the arguments that we would normally make about, the government can't infringe on your speech, which they still can't, the government can't. But a private business or a private place can, like you just can't do that here and you can't say that here. The problem is the town square is now digital and it's owned by somebody, and it's owned by a certain group of shareholders. And that's how I feel about the TikTok thing too, is like, yeah, I don't want foreign government, accessing our kids and influencing their behavior and tracking all their data and cataloging and storing it for years to come. So the solution to that is let's sell it to a bunch of American investors. That does, you know what I mean? It's like that's our alternative to this. It's kind of like The Simpsons when they had like rats, so then they got cats, so then they got dogs to chase the cats, and then they had wolverines and bears. Eventually it's like the solution is way worse than the problem. I personally I think it's obvious. You just age restrict all this stuff. You know what I mean? And I know nobody wants to hear that. I wouldn't want to hear that when I was 13. But like, does a 13-year-old need a smartphone? Do they need it? Or should there be a version that exists for 13-year-olds? Not that adults are any better off with it as well. We deal with that in our house because actually our youngest kid is the kid who's the person in the house whose screen time is monitored the most. And if he gets on an iPad when he's not supposed to have screen time, all the adults, including the young adults in the house, they put down their phones for a second to go, "Hey, get off that screen!"
then our screen goes back up.
It is, and it's like we all have a problem with it. But I think this one has, I don't know. I think it has correlations to what we're talking about right now, being on the cusp of all this stuff with AI. It's like we recognize now after the fact, like it seemed kind of bad when we started using it, but now that we've been using it for a while, it's definitely bad. It's definitely bad. So how come we can't apply the same learning to other forms of technology as well? Anyway, that was a long diatribe on my part. So I just don't think that. Who do you trust less? When I read about every Bobby Kotick, who's the guy, the Department of Treasury guy who's now putting together a group of investors to buy TikTok, all these people, it's like, okay, they're gonna solve the problem of exploiting the youth's attention and distracting them from things that we want them to be doing.
But Bernie, at least this way, the U.S. government can just buy all that information from an American-owned company and keep it in the family.
All right. Okay. It's former Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin.
There's something that, I don't like the idea that Bobby Kotick might try to buy TikTok, but I like even less the idea that American politicians are going to buy TikTok after their fellow politicians rule that ByteDance has to sell it to them.
It's interesting. You know what it makes me think of is when I was a kid growing up, there was always this talk of nationalization, that you could nationalize an industry or nationalize a company if they really got out of whack or became had a monopoly on a public utility or something like that.
Right. Something that's deemed a necessity but is being run poorly or I don't know, something.
Yeah, and now it seems like there's a weird version of that people are happy to accept, which is
We just call those bailouts.
When the airlines were bailed out several times, like why weren't they nationalized, one or two of them at that point in time? But it's a really kind of a dirty word in the U.S., like that the government would take something over. But here's the government taking a private business and making them sell it privately. It's like forced privatization domestically. It's interesting. You know what I mean? It's like government nationalization with more steps.
Right. So they can buy it, but personally for themselves.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's, I don't know. I don't know that having it be American controlled is necessarily the worst thing in the world. I just don't know that it's the best thing either.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like all those people too are like taking jobs and shipping them over to China. That's not a problem. You know what I mean? But if the CEOs, basically, it's like TikTok has found a way to export tech CEO job over to China, and like, no, those jobs have to stay here, so they're going to force a sale. That's essentially what it is, right? They're going to keep the management and the ownership here, but I'm sure it'd be bizarre if after these U.S. investors buy TikTok, if this happens. If one of the first things they do is ship the software jobs overseas, like those jobs and those things authority
whatever
can be overseas, but everything else has to be here. You know, go figure.
Speaking of privatizing the future,
how much of that I'm going to have to cut?
Speaking of privatizing the future, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, SpaceX, they've been testing their Starship. This was their third test, and it took off, and it has almost completed. It disintegrated on reentry, I think, but it completed its tests that they were running in space. So they are one step closer. Space. They're one step closer to having basically, this is what their planet hopper. The goal is for the Starship to be the planet hopping spaceship for the robots that we send instead of ourselves, because that's so much easier than sending warm, squishy bodies.
Yeah, and I'm on a kind of a grousing day here, you know, at the end of the week here. But Reuters did put out a headline for this. This is by Joe Skipper, Steve Gorman, and Joey Roulette. Joey Roulette might be the best name I've ever heard.
What's your name?
What's my name?
Joey Roulette.
Oh. I think that's so literally. Sorry, babe. I didn't know we were role playing. The headline is SpaceX Starship disintegrates after completing most of its third test flight. Oh, they changed the headline. The headline was SpaceX Starship launched on third test flight after the last two blew up. And now it's changed. I guess a lot of people took umbrage with that headline because it's really just like, what an unnecessarily snarky headline for space exploration. Like, you wouldn't say man lands on the moon after 7 billion people didn't, you know? I don't know. Just see
all those losers.
Well, hey, while we're talking about space and aeronautics, Destin from Smarter Every Day, I messaged him because I could not find the video where he whistled. And I was convinced that now that it was a false memory that I had where he learned to whistle with his fingers. And he wrote me back and said, no, here it is. It's in the Coast Guard video.
We'll put that in the link up.
And we'll put a timestamp on it too, because I got to say, if you're going into the weekend, I talked about the joy on his face, and it's exactly what I remembered when he whistles for the first time. The absolute pure joy on that man's face that's what you want to do to carry through to the weekend.
So are you learning to whistle?
I was trying it. I won't be able to do it right here. Let me see if I can do it. Let me see. Okay, fuck it. Go watch him do it. He's way better at it than I am. Also, if you're going to watch, he's a rocket scientist. So if you're going to watch, one video about a guy who works in aeronautics and is whistleblowing, that's the uplifting one. God. That's the uplifting one for this week. We can probably talk more about that next week.
Burnie, would you say it's ends on a high note?
Yeah, it ends on a high note. That's a shot in the dark.
Wow. Holy shit. Okay, well, we got dark to end the Friday.
All right. We're going to end on high note. We're going to end on high note. Anything else, Ashley, before people go into this incredible Ides of March weekend? I know people are really excited about the Ides. They've probably been preparing for the last few months. Today's the day. They're having their Ides party.
Everybody, enjoy your Ides. Look out for that meteor.
Yeah, listen, if, maybe keep the knives in the drawer this week. That's This is when Caesar was killed, right? When the Ides of March?
Is it?
Yeah. Isn't that why they say beware the Ides of March?
That would make sense.
Because that's when they went up to Julius Caesar and he's all like, hey, what's up, government? And they were like, stab, stab, stab. Right?
Yep, March 15th, 44 BCE.
Fucking look who knows his history. I know my history. I'm all over my U.S. history.
That'd be Shakespeare, right?
All right, well, that does it for us this week, ending March 15th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you on Monday. We hope you'll be here as well.
Bye, everybody.